What we came up with was a decision to take the walkway and to weave it behind one bridge, and then to come out and using a cantilever, which O'Verip is designing with us, to go in front of the pier of the 7th Street Bridge, beneath it, and then to go back again, and then at 9th Street to go back out over the river, and then up a very steep slope to 10th Street, so that the process is one of coming out like this.
Well, one of the things to notice is that in between the ramps and this walkway that comes out in front of the piers, this is also the most thickly planted part of the landscape. And so when you descend off the ramps into the park, not only are you leaving the traffic along 10th Street, but you're also entering into this kind of thickly planted woods almost, that as you get down here and if you turn around and come back into the park and over the water, this will be where it's one of the noisiest spots, right here next to the 7th Street Bridge, because you're in one of the least protected areas. But as soon as you turn around, the ramp wall is right behind you, and as soon as it gets above ear level, which is 4 or 5 feet, the sound of the traffic stops, and you're into this. It actually is going to become quite quiet now when you think of it.
Relatively
quiet. I think there will be a real impact of silence, and again, it is relative because it's so noisy right here.
Yeah, but when as you're saying, when you go by these walls and then you go on the cantilever, which goes out over the water and behind the base of the bridge, then there you're going to have additionally the base of the bridge. And so there's a whole gradient of quietness that emerges from the beginning.
Also still all these wonderful urban sounds, because one of the things you hear under here, of course, is the traffic overhead, which bounces off the water and back under the bridge. And there is a wonderful, this reminds me of...
Not in a painful way.
Not in a painful way. One of the exciting things also of being in an urban park like this, of course, is that there is all this activity around you. And so there is in no way that we tried to make this pastoral. There is... nature is present here. The river has its own natural order. And yet all of that is very much within an urban system that's very acknowledged. Quite honestly, their first reaction when we said we were going to pour more concrete, like a lot more.
But not so good.
They're going to what?
But I mean, we're not making something that's sacred here, but we are trying to reclaim some quiet, some calm, some dignity in the landscape, which has been completely robbed here with the highway, completely taken away.
But also, I think if you step back from it conceptually, and the thing that has informed maybe overtly and less overtly is an attitude of a nature that is of culture.
A key point where we realized that was when we were taking a boat ride down the Allegheny River, and we saw the overgrown edges of the river where the iron foundries used to be, and how this kind of incredible thicket of these type trees that we're actually planning on using had taken over the whole edge, and saw the power of that. And kind of the sadness, actually, that the only way you can experience that is on a boat. This will be the first time that you could actually have a civilized experience of that kind of edge in this landscape.
Just do a section through this set. Yeah, just to show that ramp. There you go.
Put a tree in there.
Yeah. That's the problem. Drawings, they separate experiences.
Wishful thinking, Michael.
Yeah.
Not for me. I've got a larger conception of time.
How about the vine screen wall? I was going to do that. Fall color.
There you go. Okay, so in looking at that example of the cantilever in section, this is how it works. This is the Allegheny over here, and then there's that walkway projecting over the water. The walk is headed out over the water, and when that happens, it frees up the space on this side for the planting in the rocks. But that's also the place where the dead weight, the counterweight, the anchors for the cantilever occur. So they're actually a solid piece that allow this projection to happen. And what we've chosen to do, rather than to bury those in the ground, is to actually let the top of the counterweight come out of the surface of the earth as a rectangle of concrete, so that there becomes on the ground a kind of woven pattern, a meeting of these very chunky, solid, and structurally necessary pieces of concrete that are interspersed with the boulders, very large boulders which are all the way around it. And then out of the little interstitial spaces of the boulders are planted these very wispy and what will be very tall native river species. This is the ramp in section. Only 6 feet wide. Rather than being vertical, it becomes this wall that's very slightly deflected towards the river.
And it angles just slightly away, extending the expression of this angle up, so that it's almost like you can lean out over into the space and into the river. And what catches you is a handrail, which is cast, which we saw in the studio.
What the railing does is, in 16-foot sections, it moves and weaves and tumbles like the movement of water. And the idea was to bring the water, the river, literally up into your hand, because in one sense, although you're over the water here, you're never actually in it.
We hope.
And we hope. And with the expression of this bronze top railing, in one sense, you can feel that movement of flowing, again, in your body, through your hand.
And so one of the interesting things about the handrail that I think we understood as a team really early on when this idea first came up is that we're taking a material like bronze, which is associated with monumental public sculpture, that almost always has some sort of vertical thrust or is associated with a prominent historical figure, and it's laid horizontal, and it's placed literally in the hands of all the people that pass into the park. So in the sense that these ramps become a democratic access to the park, what happens is that in time this handrail is going to be patinaed and marked and polished by the many hands that literally descend and pass over it as people move into the park. And so I think that it's in a very simple form. It actually embodies a lot of those values that we hope to instill in the form of the design.
Oh, and just one thing that has informed this entire process from the beginning is that this park is not principally about any one moment. It's not about any singular condition, but rather its spatiality, its linearity, its temporality, and the condition of being in the presence of water and its constantly changing quality. Similarly with the handrail, most civic monuments are about a person, a place, or a thing. This is about any person in this space over time. It's completely, it's completely taken the idea of public art and turned it into something for people to experience.